The other day, I was talking about bowls and keys, and it wasn't until I was getting some very odd comments coming through that I thought, perhaps there's something more to this that I'm missing. And I am, look, you'd be surprised to know, I think I'm naive. And so I looked it up. And what I found was that people were referring to key parties. And I'm a teenager of the 70s. I wasn't into swinging. I was into drinking Galliano first thing in the morning on my way to school. We just had another one of those situations where we'd left the volume on the computer upstairs on. And so John's just flown up and he's just flown down. And I was thinking, oh, my God, don't slip and break your leg like I did. Live video. Phil, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Robin. And I'm enjoying myself.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining us. It's you were really, you're such a busy person. It was really hard to finally pin you down, but here we are. You're pinned. You're in your room. And what is your first piece of random shit?
My first piece of random shit. Okay, well, I'll just flip this around because I'm doing this on my phone, so I will just. My first piece of random shit is, I know you said, well, when we spoke, you said, stuff that gives a warm, fuzzy glow and that you can talk about, I suppose, bits of passion. I suppose this is one of those things that it's an object, or it's two objects that aren't, I suppose, warm and fuzzy, but I kind of keep them around me at the moment to kind of really give me a bit of perspective and remind me of, my privilege and where I'm at, but also I find these are really, these are two, they're concrete Aborigines, and they remind me a lot about where we are now here in Caloundra, and a bit also about when we first came to this house. So I met my wife Lisa in Tasmania studying at university in architecture, and she's a Queensland girl, dragged me up to Queensland because there's no work in the 80s and 90s in Tasmania. And when we came to Brisbane and ultimately Caloundra, which is where all her aunties were, the first place we moved into was a rental place, and it was this little fibro beach shack here at Shelley Beach. And long story short, it ended up being the house that we now live in and we bought, and so we rented and then we lived in here. But within a week of being here, the house next door to us, so this is the second house in the street, built in 1958, and the person that owned this house, great place, was the garden, the market garden for the old St Francis, which was the only building here very early on in Caloundra's history. So one of the first buildings in Caloundra, holiday place where Lisa's grandparents had their honeymoon. Wow. And so this house was second in the street. And then in about the 60s and 70s, there was a rash of all these brick venereal buildings that were built next door. So there's one immediately next door to us. And within the first couple of days of being here, I got a knock on the back door one day from the neighbour. And he thrust this bit of metal at me, and he started telling me about this bit of metal, and I couldn't kind of get what he was talking about, but it was two bits of metal joined together with these rivets, and I turned it over and there was a swastika on it. And Scotty was this guy next door who had he'd flown Spitfires in World War II. Yep. And he started telling me all about how he essentially came across some Luftwaffe planes on the ground and flew down, killed all the pilots, and he cut that as one of his souvenirs. And wow. And ultimately, after getting to know Scotty over the next couple of years, we realised that he had a whole treasure trove of war memorabilia in the bottom of this house, this brick venereal house next door to us in Caloundra. And he was a fascinating guy, and he made toys as a carpenter, he made toys for kids, and he was a really connected sort of a fellow. But he had this pair of concrete Aborigines in the front yard, and I was always kind of fascinated by them, horrified and fascinated by them, and coveted them for whatever reason. I think partly because of this fascination, and I've got it somewhere that this female, it's kind of a really weird mixture of sort of style. There's a serpent down here. I don't know whether that's some sort of Garden of Eden kind of original sin evil thing or whatever. And she's got in her hand, you can't see, it's broken off. I've got it somewhere, but it's a hole. There was a spear coming out of there with a metal sort of shaft head on it, and these things are seriously heavy. Like, I'm reasonably fit and healthy, and I can only just lift one of them at a time, just.
Really?
But so they were in Scotty's yard for ages, and the house changed hand a couple of times, and every time it did, I kind of wanted to say to Lisa, I want to nick those things and liberate them, So, but in the end, the last guy that had the place said you can just have them, so gave them to me. So anyway, that's my kind of first bit of random shit, if you like.
I can really just picture you with when that for sale sign goes up, thinking, how am I going to approach the new owners about those 2 items in the front yard? How am I going to do that? And scheming, and I can see that.
I'd forgotten the story. I actually thought I'd stolen them. I've been telling people for ages that I'd stolen them, but Lisa reminded me the other day that it was a lot less criminal than that. But,
I like the stealing story, though. That's a good story.
Yeah. But it's weird. But it's the whole notion of a casual racism and sort of weird totemic symbolism and stuff it still sort of fascinates me. My aim actually, and I've got to contact Bianca, but Bianca Beatson, or someone who's arts practice as a First Nations artist, who really confidently and in a really great humorous way sort of provokes all that sort of white racism or white casual racism. I basically want to give these to Bianca and say, look, dude, you can have them. Do
something with them.
Do what you will with them,
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's fascinating. Okay, so my first piece of random shit is just going to thrill the pants off my sister, who is being driven mad by this show because she's a traveller and she lives out of a suitcase. And, I'm serious, she lives out of a suitcase. So I've got an array of art materials here, because I have I have this sense of, and I go through phases of doing arty kind of things, but I'm not an artist, but we all are. Yeah, I mean, we can have that conversation, but I'm not. And but I like the idea of being an artist. So I have these things. I've got some beautiful pencils and paints, and people have given them to me, and it's a real, over the years, because they're really very old. It's a mental health thing, so using these things have helped me out of some challenging situations and challenging times with, how my head's feeling and all of that kind of stuff. So I love having these things around and I like using them. But in gathering these materials today, I came across this and I opened it up, and it really is just a heap of shit. So... it really is just a heap of shit. And so what I was about to do before I came on, I was about to throw it in the bin. I picked it up and I went, you know what? That's actually a heap of shit. I'm going to throw it in the bin. And I didn't, because I thought that my sister would love to see me just go... That's it. I'm feeling liberated. I've thrown it in the bin.
Why would your sister like to see you do that?
Because yesterday she was saying, Robin, for God's sake, get rid of those round pieces of wood. Just get rid of them. Yeah.
She's your guardian against clutter, is she?
Maybe she'd like to be, but I've always been very much the individual.
Yeah.
Do what I like. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. What's your second piece of shit?
That whole thing about that balance around surrounding your things around nostalgia and things that are meaningful and clutter is it's a lovely challenging thing. I have these sort of Mary Kondo moments where I just want to bloody live like a monk and clear the place out. But
sure.
But you get such warmth and joy out of stuff,
Well, you do. I also struggle with the idea of waste and landfill. And, I do have a lot of things that are lovely. But, what do you do with them? With the old tea sets and teapots and all of that kind of stuff, do you give them to an op shop They don't want them.
Yeah,
No one
yeah.
wants to buy this shit. No one wants it. So what do you do with it? I have this romantic notion of retiring at some point before I die and having the time to do something with it, change it from its current form into another form, and then stick it out in the garden so that it can all just be garden ornaments.
Yeah. So that's, look, I think that's the motivation behind my kind of hoarding or keeping stuff is you look at an object and it's beautiful in its own right.
Yeah.
And you know that there's a beautiful piece of art or craft or something that's hiding away that needs to be unlocked. And like I was dismantling, an old trampoline that's been giving me the shits for years the other day, and I pulled it apart, and I've got about 50 of those springs left over, and I thought, shit, I can do something with these. I haven't worked out what it is yet, but I'm going to bloody well do something with them,
I love that. Will you share that with us when the time comes?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
Definitely.
So what's your second piece of random shit?
Well, again, on the theme of objects connecting you to place, and what I forgot to say about the Concrete Aborigines is they kind of remind me of Caloundra and this place having evolved over 30 years. And so, when you leave one place and go to another, you kind of evolve.
Yes.
But this is one of my many. I've got these little boxes of treasures around in all my space with just stuff in it that I kind of forget about it. And I was really conscious this morning that I didn't have. I couldn't think of a second kind of bit of shit that I could talk about. And this is a particularly good one. But while I was rummaging through this box, I'd forgotten I had this, which was the first watch I ever got when I was 10.
Wow.
And it was my first watch. And I found also, I'm not really this organised, but I actually found the original warranty from it as well.
Oh, wow, that's
And
incredible.
I've loved this watch, and actually I resolved this morning when I pulled it out and realised that the reason I'm not wearing it anymore is because it doesn't work, but I'm going to bloody well get it fixed.
Yeah.
And I remember getting this watch for my 10th birthday. If you'd asked me, I would have taken an oath and sworn that I had my name engraved on the back of it, which of course it doesn't,
Yeah.
And barristers will tell you memory is, it's an amazing thing, and it can trip you up at most times. But anyway, there's a good example of it. But one of the small things I remember, I love this watch because it was very precious to me, but I remember all the kids at school teasing me about it because it was made by a guy called Fred Joe. I don't know if you can see that in there, but you can see on the warranty, it's there's a jeweller in Bellerive, which is I live near Bellerive, near Harrow on the eastern shore for you people who know Hobart very well. But this guy called Fred Jobe was the jeweller, and he was probably one of the only jeweller on the eastern shore, I think. And mum and dad obviously got this birthday, but all the kids, of course, kids being kids at primary school, he's got a watch made by Fred Job, So they asked me the time. They said, "How's your Fred Job watch?" So that was my kind of little bit of personal shame about my watch, but it always kept good time, and I probably wore it up until about 10 years ago, but I've got to get it fixed. So you've spooned me into getting it fixed, Robin, so thank you.
Oh, that's my pleasure. That's fantastic. I also have a watch, and while we were focused on you and your watch, I was kind of trying to rummage around in the shelves behind me, but I don't know where mine is, and I have a similar story, but I'll share it another day. So my second piece of random shit is, Chris Sherby spotted these the other day. These were my 10 green bottles standing on the wall. So some time ago, I was making, what was I making? Kombucha. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And, shiny object syndrome. I'll make kombucha. That'll be really good. Let's make kombucha. What I'll need, though, are these sorts of bottles. So John, I call him John the Enabler. And I say that with sincerity and affection, because he is an enabler of all of my crazy ideas. So John, valiantly goes out and buys cartons of these and drinks them. I mean, what a man. Who does that? I'm just so impressed. So now
For the team.
Sorry?
Took one for the team.
He took several for the team, I've got to say. Anyway, I have all of these bottles, and of course, as happens sometimes, once I got all of the materials to do the job, something happened. I got busier. I did something else, and I have never done it. But the bottles are clean. They've been stored with their lids on, so they're still clean. And one day I'd like to get back to the kombucha making, because I was also using it with, because we grow ginger and turmeric and limes here. So I was making ginger, turmeric and lime kombucha, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's funny. I recognise those. I mean, I'm a beer drinker, so I recognise Grolsch. But we had a similar story in that our daughter made friends with her mates. Her mum had made kombucha, and we've got 5 of those bottles. She said, "You can have, here's some kombucha. On pain of death, I need these bottles back, because they're like gold." We've still got them, of course, but they're sitting there. And then we did the kombucha thing ourselves, but we've still got the beast, the
mother?
the SCOBY, is it?
Yeah, SCOBY.
Yeah, we've got the muddy.
Yeah.
Oh, she's dead, but she's sitting in a bottle that we're all too frightened to open and turf out, because it's going to reek, but it's kind of like a death that we don't want to acknowledge,
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it. That's funny. All right. So thank you, Phil. I've enjoyed particularly watching that blue door change over the course of the conversation because of the light shimmering on it. It was beautiful. And I think the control room would like to see the painting that's sitting behind you.
Yeah, I've been trying to kind of block it with my head a bit.
Yeah.
We can see that.
Yeah, there it is.
So I don't know. I know I can't do a third story, but that's a painting by a local artist called Jake Moss, and he had an exhibition of 200 of these paintings at the Powerhouse before November last year, I think, and he's operating out of a studio in the Transit Centre in Caloundra, and he said he had a lot there, and I was just looking at them, and that's the one I first saw, but. It wasn't in landscape, it was portrait. It was painting down, and being a middle-aged man thinking about these things, I went, I love the fact that you painted a dick and it's painting down, because it's not meant to be pointing downwards, mate. And when he exhibited at the Powerhouse, of course, there's a whole slew of Instagram photos of people, young men obviously, standing, like
with it.
This.
Yeah. That's it.
With the dick. So and he had a lot of offers for the painting, but I loved it. He's an artist who I love his work because it's fresh and he gives zero Fs, and he's really, but he's a filmmaker and a writer and a poet and a whole range of things. So that's kind of, I told him I'd put it where it would be behind Zoom meetings to remind me to sort of be spontaneous and frivolous and have fun with art and life. So it's a good reminder.
I love it. Good on you, Phil. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for the chat.
See ya. Thank you. I'm very grateful that you hang out with us at this time of the day. Even if you don't watch live, it's wonderful that you come and join us and see all of this random shit that people have. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Almost 20 minutes.
How long do you normally go for?
Well, I started at 10.
Right.
And it's kind of extend. Then I, found that 15 was okay, and then now I've, gone to 8. Well, I think that was 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, as long as it's got that speed and back and forth kind of nature to it.
Definitely.
Yeah, rather than getting the long monologues that you can get on a longer form.
19 minutes 33.
Okay, 19 minutes 33 is the call I'm getting from. Yeah. So that's, so anyway, I mean, I'm